Right, so without doubt for me, this winter, one of my key lessons that I've learned with being out 4, 5, even 6 times a week, I've been out the last few weeks teaching, I'm fishing a few matches, it is dressing properly in the winter. I see it so many times that people, they go down the layering up options and put loads of layers on and think that that can do the trick, or they just don't have the right stuff to start with. Having decent clothing during the winter, I can't tell you how invaluable it is. It's definitely worth spending a few quid on the proper items, whether it be wind stoppers or soft shell fleeces, winter suits that are phenomenally warm, just to help you out when you're fishing. They definitely catch you so more fish because you remain concentrating throughout the whole session. There's nothing worse than being freezing cold with 2 hours to go when the fishing actually starts, when it starts getting good towards the end. So definitely it's well worth buying yourself some decent kit. A little sneaky tip, just to go a bit off topic, is me being a bit of a tart. What I've also gone down the route of is some heated clothing. Yeah, I've got some of that blaze wear, heated tops underneath my normal gear, just for when it's really, really cold and I can press my little magic button and that makes everything lovely and warm, just for that last period of the match. But yeah, definitely, my main thing that I'm trying to get is just by purchasing some proper winter clothing, it without doubt catches you more fish during the winter. Right, a little trick that I've always found that really helps me to maintain the right depth all the time is using shot underneath my float. Yeah, I've seen lots of people over the years putting loads of Tipex, things like that over the pole, which to be fair, with my nice shiny new pole's the last thing I want to do. But no, joking aside, when it comes to marking your depth with Tipex, I find that there's no problem doing that with solid elastics of a number 6 grade and lower, because they don't have the power to change your rig. But anytime you're using hollow elastics, thick hollow elastics, because they have a lot of power, a lot of pull to them, generally because you're fishing them on commercial fisheries for carp, they can actually change your rig all the time. So they can create your line to stretch in different ways, more stretch or less stretch, depending on what end the elastic's at your pole, how much pressure you've put on in each fish you've caught. Which in turn, if you marry it up to your mark, if you put Tipex on your pole, that can alter quite differently, probably as much as 2 or 3 inches either way, depending on the pressure that your elastics putting on your line and how much your line's stretching. So to get that out of the equation altogether, for me, I'll always use a little tiny shot, or stops in those case, right underneath my float. And by having just a couple of, in that case I think I've got 2 number 11s there, it's a fixed marker that's never ever going to move, or hopefully never ever going to move as long as the fish doesn't go through a snag or something, that's going to mark my depth at all times. So I know that those shot, once it plumbed up and my float's at just above them, is dead depth. So I can always add depth on if I want to. Of course, I'm not going to want to go off the bottom. If I do, I'm going to have to plumb up again. But they're a nice fixed mark. They're always going to show exactly where I need to be with the correct depth on my rig. In turn, they'll also act as I call them my fine tuners, in that because I'm using little tiny ones, say just 2 number 11s, I can take them on and off or swap them for 12s, 13s, put a bigger one on, whatever, just to get my bristle how I want it. So they benefit that I can mess about my bristle a little bit if the conditions change, just by altering shot down here, while I'm not messing about with the shot that are down the bottom that are there to do a job. The last thing I want to do is be swapping shot that are at the bottom of my rig. So these allow me a bit more versatility in my rig, so I can pop it up and down just if the light changes and things like that. Right, I want to focus on float bristles, which is something I've never really covered in depth in a video before. It's, again, somewhere I see people using the wrong bristles at the wrong time, but it's definitely a little tiny element that's really worth thinking of. It can, without doubt, make a difference to what you see, what's going on, and whether you can see what's going on as well, which I'll go in more depth about in a second. So for me, I cover pretty much 4 bristles, and they'll judge from either a thicker bristle when I need to be able to see my float, or a lot's happening during the summer months, which in that case is a nice thick 2mm bristle. I'll show you that one. So by having that in my armoury, it allows me to see it on them horrible sunny days where you're fishing against features, or when you've got a load of fish in your peg during the summer and you're fishing with carp. A nice thick 2mm hollow bristle allows me to see things nice and clearly and helps distinguish liners, just lets me know what's going on a lot better. Plus, as I say, much more visible. I also touched on there, it's hollow as well. I'll always go with a nice thick hollow bristle, because the 2 different types of bristle you can get is pretty much hollow and solid. As a rule, there's a few more different materials you can use for silverfish fishing, but for commercials, hollow and solid and a nice plastic bristle, they do the jobs for everything I ever need. But what I tend to go down the route of is I use a solid bristle whenever I need an increased amount of sensitivity. Yeah, I only tend to use 1 solid bristle float, which is a nice little Malman's secret there that he makes me, and that's my maggot fishing. And the reason I use a solid bristle is because whenever I'm maggot fishing, I use a very, very light form of shotting down the bottom end, which in turn doesn't give me much magnification of bites. Because I've got such small shot down the bottom end of my rig, there's not a lot for the fish to move to register a bite. So by having a solid bristle with no air and a much lower level of buoyancy, it does actually help to go under a little bit better when I'm fishing with nice little delicate rigs, with nice little delicate shotting. When it comes to normal fishing, my everyday fishing, then I tend to go with either a 1.2 or a 1.5 mil hollow bristle. That's my normal whenever I'm going to fish pellets, meat corn, whenever I'm setting a little trap and I've got a nice little heavy dropper on the bottom end, then I can use hollow bristles because they have a bit more buoyancy, a little bit less sensitivity, but in turn they will take heavy shot in and keep them nice in place. And again, I can see them a little bit better. And because it's a hollow bristle, you find them a lot easier to shot because they've got that bit of buoyancy in the tip that makes things a bit better. But I'd say it's definitely worth thinking about the type of bristle you're using and using it to your benefit. If you need a bit more sensitivity, then yeah, a hollow bristle is definitely going to work a lot better, a solid bristle, sorry, but it's a little bit more difficult to see. Or if you need to see a float, a nice thick tipped hollow bristle float, that's going to do the job for you. So just have a think about your bristles a little bit more next time you're out. Right, something that I see people not putting quite enough thought into is how the bait is actually leaving the pot, so that the actual correct pot that they choose. Of course, when it comes to size of pot, what all that comes down to is how much bait you want to put in. With that, I'm not too bothered. That comes down to your peg on the day and how much bait you're putting in. But the actual lid of the pot itself, it can make a big difference in the reaction that you get off the fish. Yeah, for me, it's about keeping things simple, and I actually use 3 different types of sort of lid, or 2 lids and one without a lid, to create either a different fall or to try and achieve something else in my peg. If I run through all 3 nice and easy, so firstly, I'm going to go with my sprinkle lid. Yeah, dead basic, comes with loads of different types of pots these days. It's a nice sprinkle lid that allows me to put a volume of bait into my cup, but not put it all into my peg at once. So I tend to use my sprinkle lid as my attractor lid. That's when I want to draw new fish into my peg and I want to have constant bait falling through the water. Then I'll use a little tiny lid. I'll just sort of turn my pole sort of 2 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and I just tap pellets, maggots, whatever I've got in my cup out. So there's a constant column of bait, if you like, falling through the water. That can be brilliant for when there's no fish in my swim and I need to pull new fish in, or if I'm using light baits like maggots, for a constant amount of bait going in really accurately to allow me to catch fish through the water if that's how they want to feed, if I'm after certain species with certain baits. So my sprinkle lid allows that to happen lovely. Second up, I'll bring my nice little round, what should we call that? Just sort of a collar lid, if you like. All that's simply for me is getting a bait like hard pellets, bigger particles, maybe meat, maybe a bit of corn, out to my peg without it spilling out my pot. If I weren't to have that in, if I were to just have a solid sides to the pot, it can spill really, really easily. It can be a bit of a pain. So for feeding any loose particle sort of baits, a nice little collar is always going to do the job for me in that case. It just helps me get it out there and helps me put it in my peg quite quickly. It doesn't sink it doesn't go in quite as much as a lump as it would if I had no lid, that I'll talk about in a second, but it still gets out there and I get a nice pile of bait in straight to the bottom nice and quick. And if I really do feel that I'm nice and steady on the day, I haven't had too many beers the night before, I can even use that as a bit of a tapping lid with bigger particles that can fall out if I want to loose feed a few pellets, 1 or 2 at a time. I can still do that with a nice collar lid because it helps keep my bait in. As I said, lastly, it'll be a cup without any lid on at all. This is my bagging rig that comes out on my bagging cup, that when I want to introduce a nice little tight pile of bait and get it down very, very quickly, normally if I'm using a lump of worms, a ball of micro pellets, even a little tiny ball of ground bait, then that's the time I'm going to whiz my lid off, ship out there, put a tight pile in, get it to sink down as quickly as possible because I don't need to draw any fish into my peg because hopefully they're already present and I want to keep them on the bottom. Then that sort of pot's going to be the job for the day. That's what I'm going to feed me lumps of bait with to keep it nice and accurate. So say by having a nice little simple pot, so in these cases these little new Matrix ones that I've just started playing with, they allow me to play about my lids. You get 2 nice little simple lids that pop off, but it creates a lot of versatility for your feeding. So if you can think about what lid you're using and why, say hopefully that'll be able to keep your peg nice and controlled, or if you need to, as I said, with a sprinkle pot, maybe draw a few fish in just by introducing your bait in a different way. You'll be amazed the difference it can make. Right, another little edge for me is using bait that matches what I'm feeding. During the summer months, I'm obsessed with fishing hard pellets because I can feed a 6mm hard pellet and I can put one on the hook. It's exactly the same. In winter, it gets a little bit more difficult, simply because we were relying so much on either crushed expander, which I use a lot to attract fish into my peg, or micro pellets, which is probably the bulkier feed when feeding little tight piles for F1s, skimmers, carp, whatever, during the winter. They're my go-to bait are always going to be a nice softened up micro pellet. The issue that I've got with expander pellets, or normal expander pellets, 4mm, is for me, I can't see why fish should eat them. Of course, hundreds and thousands of fish get caught on them all the time, but fish learn without doubt when they're in these commercials. They get caught a hell of a lot, they get fished for a lot. So why on earth they'd continue to eat the single 4mm pellet over a bed of micro pellets or ground bait is beyond me. I can't get it in my head. So yeah, of course it does work, they do eat them. But for me, for confidence, I'm all about matching things. So the confidence I have at the minute in little tiny expanders, using little tiny, I'm not sure what they're sold as, 2.5mm I think they're sold as, little tiny expanders that match almost identically, or as close as I can possibly get, to my soft micro pellet hook bait. So these will swell up a little bit more. I've actually only just wet these, so they've not blown up to the maximum they can. But by matching my bait, I'm completely confident that when a fish comes into my peg, it doesn't see my bait as the odd one out. You know what I mean? Yes, I'm all for standout baits, and that often a fish picks out a nice big visible bait. Without doubt that works in lots of occasions. But for me, when creating competition, I've got lots of spooky fish that don't want to be caught in my peg, which we do in the winter with these F1s. By blending in my hook bait to exactly what I'm feeding, it just gives me confidence that when a fish is in the peg, I'm not giving it a reason to avoid my bait, other than the fact that it's got a big lump of metal in it, which I can't avoid that. It's always going to have the hook there. But by blending them in as tightly and as closely as I can possibly get, for me, I think fish pick my bait out more readily instead of avoiding it like they do with formal expanders. So definitely give it a try, whether it's your skimmers or F1s. It's another thing that for me gets me more bites. Right, with me, as with everything I do, it's about keeping things as simple as possible during the winter months. And very similar to the summer, I'm all about doing things in two ways. This is when I'm on about feeding. I'll either feed a really accurate pile if I think it's going to be a bit difficult and I'm not sure what fish are feeding, and I'll fish a really static, really stable bait over the top of it, or I'll choose a bait that I can loose feed and I'll fish a really nice light rig through it. So firstly, today I'm just going to focus on my nice little positive rig for whenever I'm putting a really tight pile. It tends to be with baits that I can actually achieve a tight pile with, either, I mentioned it, worms, pellets, tight micro pellets, a ball of ground, baits that I can make land on a very, very accurate pile on the bottom. So by choosing a bait like that, I can achieve this lovely tight pile, and then what I need is a lovely stable rig with the correct type of shot in to present my bait as accurately as possibly over that pile. So there's no need when feeding that way for any fancy rigs that are going to sink through the water nice and slowly, simply because I'm not presenting any bait in that way. There's no bait falling through the water other than that initial quick pile that goes straight to the bottom. So why try and catch fish through the water when my feed's not trying to do that in the first place? So if I run you through my rigs that I'm going to use, very basic for that sort of way of feeding, it's all about stability, and I've mentioned it plenty of times before on lots of videos I've done about keeping things right and accurate where I want them to be. So having a nice stable float. In this case, I've got a nice wire slim body float, which are my favourites for nearly every time I'm going to do this. I'm going to choose a slim wire float. The wire is going to help firstly to keep it nice and still, with wire being a sinking material, it keeps things nice and stable, but mainly it's my shotting down the bottom end that does the job that I want it to do. So in this case, I've got a 4/14 float, which a 4/14 tends to be the float I use from probably about 3.5 to about 4.5, 5 foot on a normal nice weather day when it's not too windy. And a 4/14 in the floats that I use, it takes 6 number 9 shots, which is a nice positive way of shotting, and I'll simply spread those number 9 shots out at probably 1.5 to 2 inch intervals, all in the bottom quarter of my rig. And because I've got them nice down the bottom end of the rig, it keeps things nice and stable right over the top of that pile. But also because I've got heavy shots close to the hook, like my first shot in this case is 5 inches away from my hook. I've got a number 9 there right on top of my hook length, actually on my hook length, just to tighten those loops up a little bit. But because I've got such a big shock so close to my hook, what it does, it magnifies any bites. So as soon as a fish actually touches that bait and moves that first shot, because it's a big heavy shot, because it's a number 9, it gives me a nice positive indication on my float. Whereas if it was a light shot, a 10, 11, a 12, even lighter than that, then the movement will be very small and I may not even strike at it. So when I'm fishing these matches in the winter, when I'm after just 5 or 10, 15 fish at the most, and every bite needs to be converted into a fish, by using heavy droppers that aid stability, it actually helps me see things a little bit better and puts a few more fish in my net. Right, I want to have a little chat about swim choices, or how you actually approach your peg, or how you feel your way into a peg during the winter. It's without doubt one of the key things that I see people doing wrong during the winter is straight away going for it. Introducing lots of bait, or bait in general, right at the start of the match on a commercial fishery. Without doubt it can be the kiss of death instantly, especially at the beginning of a session when fish just don't want to eat. At this time of year, your windows of when they actually have a feed are so small. If you've introduced a volume of bait at times when there's nothing happily to eat that bait, then you're going to accumulate a lot of feed on the bottom, and then when they actually come and have a feed, you don't catch anything. So when you're faced with a peg, for me, I'm going to use today's peg for example to keep things nice and simple. For me, it's about looking what you've got, of course, first. Your features are your nice added bonus, and at winter time, any features for me, that's your dobbing. You have to start at a carp and F1 fishery. Without doubt, you've got to start dobbing. It's always worth a quick go, especially at somewhere with lots of features, just to see what's feeding without putting any bait into your peg. So you actually catch fish without upsetting any areas, which in turn, by fishing as many areas as you possibly can without introducing bait, what it does, it leaves your peg as a nice little quiet area, whereas opposed to others that are feeding, and the fish will actually accumulate in your area quite often just because you're the only one that hasn't put any bait into your peg. What it also does, by not introducing feed at the start, it gives you a few minutes, hours, whatever, however long it takes for you to keep catching fish dobbing, to understand what's actually happening on the lake. I mean, it takes no time whatsoever for you to introduce bait and start feeding if others around you are catching by feeding some bait. But say just by sitting back, it's a big edge that I do. It's just sitting back, watching everyone, just for the start of a match, just if you're unsure of how it's going to fish, just watch what's going on and then go about whatever they tell you you need to be doing. And after that, it's just a case of covering as many different areas as possible before you actually start feeding. Yeah, when you start setting up, it's nice having rigs for as many different areas or as many different depths as you possibly can, just so when you've seen others start catching, you've got that option covered and you can go to it, start fishing, and it just puts you in a little bit ahead of the competition because you're doing the right thing really quickly instead of trying to work it out for yourself. Right, so like I've mentioned many times, my love for having a little dob around before I start fishing. For me in the winter, it's just massive. It's won me so many matches by catching fish that don't want to feed. I just can't see any reason why you wouldn't want to do it. It catches fish that literally are uncatchable in pretty much every other way. But there's a few little things that for me, I'm not actually going to talk about the actual fishing now, but there's a few little things that I do with my rig, more importantly, that I definitely feel that get me a few more bites. And these days where fish have seen a lot, they've seen that little single piece of bread or maggots or corn skin, whatever, dangling in front of their noses many times before. So I think there's just a few little things that you can make your rig a little bit nicer, a little bit better than everyone else's, that can get you a few more bites. So firstly, hook choices. That's been a big thing for me with dobbing bread, is using the lightest gauge of wire I possibly can, in conjunction with the type of fish I'm going to catch and how much pressure I'm going to put on my hook, pulling them out of these snags, or the size of fish as well, because it could be that I'm fishing for some big fish. But by using the lightest gauge wire I possibly can, and a nice size 18, it gives my bread a nice natural fall. So by flattening my bread nice and tightly around my bait with a nice light hook, there's not too much weight in that hook taking my bait down, so it makes it look really nice. That in conjunction with nice little, very small droppers. So in that case, I've got 3 or 4 number 12s spaced through my entire rig. It's all about the fall of your bait. Yeah, it's about grabbing those fish's attention, that they're just sat in the weeds or sat wherever in the peg. They just want to see this little lovely particle go past them, and if it sinks nice and naturally, they'll have a go. If it sinks like a house brick, then they're going to ignore that every single time, just because it doesn't look too good. Other than that, it's the same style of rig that I'm always going to use, a nice little stable float, a wire stem, that really helps me put it in those little tight places. But lastly, something I've not spoke about a lot before when I've been dobbing, is the length of line I use in between my float and my pole. So this is huge. It's compared to your pellet fishing or your maggot fishing, where you're much more likely to use sort of a 6 to 10 or 12 inch line in between your float and your pole to be nice and accurate, with dobbing, I think you want to go the opposite way. By having a nice, really long, so in that case, I've probably got about 2.5 foot, great big long line. It both gives me versatility in that I can move my rig I mean, I've got a lot of water I can potentially cover. I can move that down as small as a foot. I can fish it as deep as 3 foot, all within the same rig. Or more importantly, I can keep my pole away from them fish. So you can't really see it today, but the water has gone ever so clear. It's like tap water, which is typical of so many venues at this time of year. So just by having that longer length of line, it just allows me to keep my pole right away from those features and hopefully just keep a few more fish in the area without spooking them wiggling that pole over the head. So it's just something for me, I definitely feel it gets me 2 or 3 more bites every time I'm out. Right, without doubt for me, my biggest edge for years and years and years has been about scaling down that little bit further than most people do during the winter months. I don't care what people say, it without doubt gets you more bites. But when it comes to scaling down, it's not about just going as light as you possibly can, just in order to get a bite, because you've still got to get the fish out. What I want to just touch on now is about doing it in the right way, making sure everything's nice and balanced. That's probably the word you're going to hear most often on this subject. But keeping things nice and balanced so you don't suffer breakages, but you can still be nice and efficient, get more bites in the first place, but get all the fish out nice and quickly as you would if you were fishing proper kit. So it won't make any difference as long as you're using nice balanced kit. So for me, when I say balanced, first thing that I actually completely eliminate that doesn't come into the equation is the main line. Main line to me, it doesn't make any difference. Yeah, I like using a nice robust main line of 0.15, 0.17, 0.16. It's something nice and durable that stays nice and straight, doesn't get in as many tangles, and I can just use my rigs multiple times. There's less chance of me getting horrible knots that I can't get out. So my main line's doesn't actually come into it when I want to balance my kit. What does come into it, however, is my elastics, my hooks, and my hook length line. So it's your hook length line for me and your type of hook that's going to get you more bites. So firstly, if I touch on hooks, it's about going as light a gauge in wire as you dare for what fish you're trying to catch. There's no point trying to fish for great big carp and go into a really light gauge hook if you're trying to get them out of snags. It's about going as low as you possibly can for the situation. Yeah, for me, I like fishing lovely little light bloodworm hooks for F1s in nice open water venues because I'm not going to have any aggro and I can still get them out and it's going to get me a few more bites, as is dropping down to a diameter of 0.8 in my hook length. I've got no trouble whatsoever in using an 0.8 with a nice little light hook as long as my elastic is balanced enough to never overpower that hook length material. That's where most people go wrong, is fishing quite a positive summertime solid with too light a hook length. That's going to cause you breakages and cause you lost fish, just because it's simply overpowering them knots too much on your lighter lines. So if you think about it and go a little bit lighter, so you really like solid elastics, or say the slick elastic in my case, something there's no chance of it overpowering your hook length and also not overpowering your light gauge wire hook. By adding all 3 of those combinations up together, it's another little edge for you that is going to get you more bites on them really hard days. Right, a little key thing for me during the winter that I definitely feel is a bit of an edge is that anytime I'm feeding bait and I'm trying to be really, really accurate, because there's very few fish feeding, so I want to be fishing pretty much on a 2p as tight as I possibly can. Having more stability in my rig than anyone else, I definitely feel it gets me a few more bites. To do that, without doubt, my biggest thing that helps me keep my rig where I want it to be is the use of the back shot. It's something that is definitely not used enough in fishing these days. You need a back shot. The benefits it gives me, I couldn't fish without one. I literally don't. I never fish on the bottom without using a back shot, just for the benefits it gives me. So by having a nice little heavy back shot, so in today's case, I've put 2 number 8s halfway in between my float and my pole, which in fact, I'll just touch on that quickly. So by having them, making sure you have them halfway in between and never closer to your float, what that allows never to happen is, as long as I never dip my pole underwater, my back shots never get incorporated into the float shotting, which in turn would give you a false bite. So by always making sure they're slightly closer to my pole than they are the float, they need to be moved up 1/2 inch. So they're nice now, they're probably 2 inches closer to my pole. What that allows is never ever for me to give me fake bites. But at the same time, what it's going to do is by sinking those back shots just below the waterline, they sink this little piece of line in between my float and my back shots. and it stops it moving about. So it increases that sensitivity and keeps it right on the little pile where I fed my bait. What it also does is it sort of soaks up any movement of my pole tip. So my pole tip wobbling about in the wind will be transferred to my back shot instead of to my float if I were to not have a back shot, which in turn, if I didn't have them, it'd be moving my float all over the place. The back shots help keep my float nice and still and unhindered by any of my movements during the winter of either when I'm shivering because it's flipping freezing or whether it's a bit blustery and it's blowing about. So a back shot, without doubt for me, it's my #1 aid to better presentation. Right, so I've covered about me nice positive rig for whenever I'm feeding a tight little pile. But of course, there's going to be days when that's going to be no good. If I need to attract new fish into my peg, or I need to use other baits such as maggots and casters, maybe meat even if it's summertime or whatever else, and they're going to sink very, very slowly through the water, then it's pretty much pointless trying to fish a really stable rig that holds everything in place. Simply because my bait doesn't want to do that. The loose feed that I'm putting in my peg, it sinks ever so slow. Like if I use maggots, for example, it's something again I've spoken about before, is maggots probably sink about 4, 5, even 6 seconds a foot. So it's a hell of a long time. If you're fishing in sort of 4 or 5 foot, it's a long time for those maggots to actually get to reach the bottom, and it gives the fish a massive window to intercept your bait on the way through. So when I'm fishing baits like that, I really need to think about my rig again. It's completely discarding my positive rigs, and instead I want to fish a rig that can present my bait in the right way or the same way as that my maggots or whatever else are falling. Just keep things nice and natural. So my rig for fishing maggots at any time, it's very similar around the Dobbing sort of principles, because pretty much, if I'm honest, that's all you're trying to do with maggots, is that you're trying to create a natural fall all the way through and make it look good, exactly the same as you are with Dobbing. But just to refine things a little bit, to make things nicer, it's about just fining up all my rigs for when I am going to fish maggots. So again, the same as where we were Dobbing, I'm going to use a nice little light gauge wire hook that's not going to interfere with my maggots too much. It's going to make my maggots sink nice and naturally, and I might also hook my maggots in certain ways to make them sink a little bit slower. But when it comes to shotting my rig, of course, that's the main influence in how my bait's going to fall. So by shotting it with really nice little small shot all the way through my rig, so in this case with a nice 4x10s that we're going to fish in 3 foot across, I have 2 number 12s at the bottom and then evenly spaced number 11s throughout my entire rig with a carbon stem, nice little slim carbon stem float. Carbon's vital whenever you're fishing through the water, which again, it's something I've touched on before, is that with a wire stem, if you were to put that in the water, it's immediately vertical. But with a carbon stem, it lays flat and it actually follows your bait all the way through the water. So at any time you get a bite, you see a distinctive pull on your float. Whereas if it was a wire stem and that was vertical and your rig was at a right angle, you'd get sort of a wobble instead of a bite. So a carbon actually keeps you in contact whenever fishing through the water a lot better, and you can see any of those little bites where the fish are intercepting your bait on the way down, and hopefully catch them great big massive F1s that love picking your bait up on the way. Right, next for me I want to touch on is winter elastics. Definitely just focusing on the elastics I want to use in winter. Because for me, for years and years and years, I've been an avid believer in that hollow elastics have a lot less usage during the colder months. Just simply because they behave weird, they toughen up, and they're just not as nice as they are when the temperature's up in the warmer months. So because of that reason, I always went on to solid 6s, solid 8s. They were my go-to elastics in the winter. Since playing with these lads at Matrix, I've had a proper play with this slick stuff. It has completely changed all my fishing for winter fishing on my elastics, simply because what it allows me to do is to retain the stretch properties of a hollow elastic, and that it has about 8-9 to 1 stretch, compared to a solid elastic that only has about a 4 to 1 stretch. So I retain that lovely soft elastic, if you like, during the winter, when I'm much more prone to bumping fish, but I can still use a much more durable, much nicer, thicker elastic, which this slick stuff does. Of course, there's still a time when I'm going to use my hollow stuff, whenever I'm in a peg sort of today's, when I've got a few snags and I've got to pull fish out, because that beefing up will actually help a little bit. But for me, I'm now a complete convert in having to go with my slick stuff, just my winter months. This is going to be my winter silvers, but mainly my F1 elastic, that allows me to have a lovely soft stretch when I first strike into my fish. But unlike solid elastics, I can really power into it and I can get them back and I can get them into a net as quickly as possible. So well worth having a little go of that slick just for your winter months. I promise it'll make a difference to your fishing. But on a little separate note, and a little sneaky tip that I want to talk about, which I talk to a lot of people when I'm out coaching, this is something I show people, is that me being a bit of a tight arse, I don't like buying lubricants from my pole. I think they're extortionate for what you're buying in most cases. So for me, this is officially the best stuff in the world. What I use is a simple conditioner that my missus gets from me from Home and Bargain or whatever, because it's nice and cheap. But the reason I get that simple one is because it has no perfume to it, so it doesn't smell. And what I do, in my old washing up liquid bottle, I put 1 part hair conditioner and about 6 or 7 parts warm water. Make sure it's warm because it dilutes nicely then. And what that does, by giving that a nice little shake, you end up with a lovely liquid that makes my elastic work beautifully. And just as a bit of a Blue Peter sort of way, I'm going to show you my elastic there. Right, that's been sat in my tube for about 2 weeks now, so he's a bit nasty. But add in a quick square to me, and my lubrication to it. Give it a good squirt so it happens nice and quick. It is unbelievable how nicely it makes my elastic work instantly. As soon as that comes through, you can see it's just completely different elastic. And that'll work like that all day long. Let's get rid of the excess. And make me bump less fish just because my elastic works so nice as a result. Right, now for me, one of me proper edges throughout the years has been using the best landing net I can possibly use. For me, having the stiffest and longest landing net for whatever situation I'm in, it's invaluable. It without doubt gives me more time on the bank, or more time in the water rather fishing, because I'm not messing about. I land fish quicker than I could if I had a short, floppy, horrible net that I can't chase fish about with. So since moving to Matrix, without doubt, the product for me that I like more than anything else is my landing net pole. So they've proper thought about it. They've done me a 5.5 metre version of the Horizon landing net pole, which is like a poker. It's unbreakable, but it gives me the options in being able to use it 5.5 metres, 4 metres. I could even use it shorter if I wanted, but 5.5, 4 metres is going to be about the shortest I'm ever going to use it. But at the same time, it's phenomenally stiff, which allows me to get to fish at whatever length I want to use it. I'd say it's got a nice bit of versatility as well, in that I've got my 2 main sections, obviously, that I'm always going to use my nice handle, which has got a bit of a proper grip on it, so I can ship to my fish. But also, the second, or the first and second, if you want to call it, sections, they've both got screw thread added to them. So I can either use that as a really stiff 4 metre net, or I can use it as a nice posh little canal net if I want to go nice and tidy, or ultimately I can use it at full length at 5.5 metres, but still maintain a lovely light landing net that's perfectly easy and shippable about, but retains its stiffness and gets them fish in my net quicker as soon as they pop up. It just saves me so much time on the bank. I'll definitely feel it's an advantage over someone having a better landing net just through the time it saves me.